It's not just about avoiding divorce and separation. It's perhaps more importantly, it's about living a life and having a marriage and role modeling a marriage for your kids, but also juicing yourself with the type of life and wife that you thought you were going to have. Patterns do repeat themselves and behaviors repeat themselves. And guys who typically get divorced have a bigger statistical chance of moving towards separation and divorce in the subsequent relationships. Let's talk about the difference between first, second, and third marriages. There is a basic statistic out there. The amount of first marriages that end up in divorce is 54%. Second marriages, 60%. Third marriages, 73%. Why is it that when someone goes through 5, 10, 15 years of investing their heart, their time, their energy, their love in a relationship, that regardless of whatever they learned in their first relationship or regardless of what happened, it seems that the chances of the next intimate relationship not working out actually gets worse, not better? There are two basic reasons for this. Number one is because for a lot of guys, and I'm speaking to guys right now, they actually did not learn from their first marriage because they primarily were coming from a place of blame. So even if they may have said, hey, I could have, or I should have done certain things differently, the dominating major feeling that they're experiencing when they reflect on their first relationship is one of blame. And psychologically speaking, what's going on internally within your brain when you are in a place of blame, no matter how smart you are, no matter how honest you want to be, no matter how aware you are, it actually prevents you from seeing the truth of what could have been different, how you could have shown up differently, because it is far more tempting for you to look at your wife, your ex-wife in this case, and say, well, she was fill in the blank, and that is why this relationship didn't work out, or that is why I couldn't find the energy within me. Granted, there are some exceptions where some marriages are so not sustainable that it is better for a couple to divorce. But by and large, for the vast majority, it is really a matter of missed signals, not seeing problems in the relationship while they were small and easy to fix. Here's an interesting thing. There are a lot of men, on the other hand, who do reflect a lot on their previous relationship before they go into the second and third marriage, or they thought that they reflected. And what happens is they still are part of the statistic of the second marriage having a higher chance of divorce, and the third marriage, like I said before, 73% chance of the marriage not working out. And these men are not stuck in blame. They're not stuck in that place. And again, the question is, so why is their next relationship not working out? What is going on behind the scenes? And the reason in those cases, usually, is because the things that they have learned from their first marriage, the lessons they learned, the awareness, the changes that they started to make in their second marriage as a result of whatever they learned in their first marriage are changes in the major areas. So for example, if you look back at your first marriage, you say, you know what, man, I was just selfish. And you know what? I'm going to make sure my second relationship that I'm not going to be selfish or have a bad temper. And I'm just giving you examples, simple examples, for the purpose of understanding what I'm talking about. What happens then is that you only learn from the major issues, the major explosions, but the small, little warning signs, which triggered your wife and yourself, are not picked up. So the small little interactions, things that you say or don't say, things that you do or don't do, which then led her or fed her or pushed her to be in a place where she acted in a certain way that then brought on your temper, or may have made you act in a way that you weren't really being selfish, but you were trying to protect yourself. And this was then causing her to believe or feel or see that you are being selfish. Those little things are not picked up typically. So I'm just giving you an example so you guys can understand. So that is why when guys go to the second or third marriage, if they don't actually pick up the exact small missing signals, I'm talking about hundreds and thousands of little day-to-day interactions that then fed the major problems, all what you'll be stuck at, even with the best of intentions, without blame, while trying to take responsibility, you will probably be taking responsibility either for only the major things like we discussed, or for things that don't really matter. And either way, it leads a couple over time to those statistics of increasing the divorce rate. Like I said, second marriages are typically 60%, and then it moves on to 73%. Regardless of what you're going through, whether you're in your first, second, or third marriage, even if you're not heading towards divorce, and what I feel is worse, or personally what was worse for me, is to be stuck in a place where you're frustrated, where you're miserable, where you feel unseen, disrespected, unheard, that your opinions and your feelings don't matter, and your wife doesn't really get you, and you are really trying hard to get her, and it's not working, right? So it's not just about avoiding divorce and separation. It's perhaps more importantly, it's about living a life and having a marriage and role modeling a marriage for your kids, but also juicing yourself with the type of life and wife that you thought you were going to have. So, regardless of where you are, it's important to understand these things because patterns do repeat themselves and behaviors repeat themselves. And guys who typically get divorced have a bigger statistical chance of moving towards separation and divorce in the subsequent relationships. And that's why it's important to hold a mirror to yourself and be honest and not just brush it under the rug and say, hey, I learned from a first marriage, I'm not going to repeat it in a second marriage. Most guys do not actually succeed with that. Now, here's another interesting statistic. And I don't really like statistics because they're cold and unfeeling. So I like going into the analysis and what's the lesson learned, what you can gain from it, what type of inspiration, what type of clarity, what type of guidance and strategy. First marriages that end in divorce, on average, is between 8 and 9 years. Second marriages is between 7 and 10, which is very interesting. The lower number is a little bit lower, and the higher number is a little bit higher. And third marriages are 5 to 8. It's between 8 and 9. That's the average time before a couple, or usually the wife in most cases, because the women are the ones who are initiating divorces and separation. And part of that, by the way, interesting point, is because they're the ones who are usually bothered by the relationship way earlier. Usually it's the guy that didn't realize that his wife was upset for so long, or she was frustrated, or she was feeling unsafe or unheard, or there was no passion. Usually it's the guy that will realize a year or 2 or 3 or 5 years later. So that's the reason why women are usually the ones initiating divorce, because by the time that they made the decision that they're done, they've already felt done for a long time. But back to the point, so that's typically about 8 to 9 years. The interesting thing is by second marriages, it's between 7 and 10 years. And the question is why, right? So I have an interesting thought about it. Having spoken to quite a few guys in second marriages, it fits the picture. What happens is, in first marriages, the number is 8 to 9. How come in second marriages it's 7 to 10? Here is where some guys split. Some guys go down the track. Some men say, as they see the problems in their second marriage piling up, a lot of guys feel, 1 second, I recognize this. I've seen this before. This is really frustrating. I don't want to deal with it. It's subconscious. It's a feeling of, oh my God, I don't want to deal with this again. I already dealt with this. I thought this wouldn't repeat itself, and here it is. So some guys, the relationship ends up finishing a little bit earlier. Instead of 8 to 9, it's at 7 years. But some men go the opposite way. This is fascinating. Some men stick it out to 10 years, or some marriages stick it out to 10 years. And this is not just because of the man, sometimes it's because of the woman. Where one or both of the couple feel, 1 second, we had a relationship, a marriage that ended in failure and frustration and pain, and it's sometimes lingering pain to us, to our kids, and whatnot. Let's make this work. Let's make this second marriage work. So in second marriages, a lot of times, the reason why that number is at 10 years, because a lot of men and women push themselves to say, I do not want to repeat what happened in my first marriage. And that's why you see that number being a little bit bigger. Some guys give up earlier for the same reason. They're like, oh my God, I saw this before. I don't want to deal with it. The interesting thing, though, is that by the third marriage, that number drops on all levels. The number is between 5 to 8 years. Third marriages do last significantly shorter than second marriages. And the reason for that is pretty obvious, because at that point, when you already have spent your energy and your time and your hopes and your dreams onto relationships, when you see those patterns repeating themselves in your third relationship, it is a lot more demoralizing. It's a lot more frustrating. There's a much stronger sense of, oh my God, I just can't do this. I just can't do this again. I just don't, there's no point. And that's sad, but that's true. Now, the advantage though, so you may look at it and say, it sucks to be my second or third marriage. True or not true, it depends on you. In fact, guys in a second or third marriage, usually more in the second one, have an advantage over people in the first marriage. In a sense, and I'm not saying go ahead and get divorced and start a second marriage. I'm saying there is a sense, just because you've gone through the pain of a first divorce, typically guys are quicker to be able to see that they are in the process of repeating patterns, but they don't really know where those patterns are starting. They're not seeing them at smaller stages and earlier stages, at parts in their life and in the relationship with their wife where it's easy to fix. So that awareness, that maturity, that honesty is more present in second marriages versus the first marriage. Many guys have this like a cocky sense of self-confidence and arrogance. Sometimes it's rooted in healthy self-confidence. Sometimes it's just a blind arrogance of we're going to make this work, we'll be okay. Or if we're not okay, it's her fault. Now what happens is in a second marriage, a lot of that it's her fault starts getting stripped out because if you're a good guy and you want to be a good guy and you have a basic sense of self-awareness, you're like, 1 second, I've seen this before. I've been through this. And that's where it starts kicking in. Well, maybe it's not her. Maybe it's me. But then what do I do if it's me? All right. But there's a lot you can do. And there are a lot of videos over here that will show you how to do that. But the first step is to come face to face with yourself and to say, okay, there are things that have been repeating themselves. There are, even though I thought I learned certain lessons, I obviously did not. Or I learned the major lessons, but I don't see the little things. I don't see what are the things I'm doing which are making my wife think things about me which aren't true. What are the things I'm saying or doing which is making her question my love or question my changes or question any other area of trust? What are those things that are decreasing the passion? So you'll see the big things, because like I said before in the beginning of today's training, those are easier to notice when you're looking for them and you're not blaming, but the smaller things do take a lot more focus, take expertise, they take guidance. And that's why we have a lot of videos on this channel. And that's why a lot of guys do end up getting personal mentorship in order to actually learn and apply those skills to your life with your wife in a custom-made way. But the journey starts with you looking at yourself in the privacy of your own thoughts, reflecting, and sometimes meditating or praying and asking yourself, could it have been differently? What am I missing over here? Even if you don't know how to solve the entire problem right away, because it does take quite a bit to turn around a relationship, at least start seeing what's the first step. I'd love to hear your distinctions, what clarity you gained. And if you gained from this video, let me know, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you in the next video.